Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Managing Hamilton, an insider look at a stage manager's point of view. We're so excited to have this masterclass for y'all today. I want to send it straight to Eric, but before I do that, just want to go over a couple quick ground rules. Just remember to keep yourselves on mute throughout this masterclass until we get to the question and answer portion. Then there's going to be an area where you can raise your hand. If you have a question, we'll unmute you then, and then you can go ahead and ask your question to Eric. In the meantime, if you have any questions before the Q&A, feel free to leave them in the chat window below, and we'll take care of those as they come in. And if you are joining us and you are not a high school student, feel free to leave any of your questions in the chat window below, and we will get to those after we help our wonderful high school students. All right, and without further ado, Eric, take it away.
Excellent. Good morning, everybody. How are you all? Just a quick thumbs up. Is everybody hearing okay? I don't want to launch into a bunch of be funny if I got 5 minutes in and everybody's like, I can't hear words you're saying. Listen, thanks for having me. I'm super thrilled to be able to share a little bit about my journey as a stage manager, and we'll certainly have a little fun tying that back to a show that is the size and scope of Hamilton. I'm going to just start with a little bit about how I got to this Zoom call today. I'll give you I'll try to give you the 3 to 4 minute version. Like many of you, I was first introduced to theater in high school. Very late though. I was an athlete in high school, and I had a drama teacher who said to me, "Hey, we're doing Camelot. We really need some guys." And I said, "Hey, look, I don't know how I can play football and be in Camelot." And he said, "Well, if you want to do it, we'll make it happen." And so I did. I played football from 3:30 to 6:30. I took a 30-minute dinner break, and I put on tights and a tunic from 7 o'clock till 9:30 or 10 o'clock. And that's how I got exposed to theater. And I was on a fast track in medicine. I actually had a full ride to be a nurse. I had a full scholarship to nursing school right out of high school. I got to nursing school. I had to select my electives my first year, and my choices for arts were drawing 1, sculpting 1, and a technical theater class. I do not draw and I do not sculpt. So that left technical theater as the choice. I took that. About halfway through that class, I just started to skip my nursing homework, wasn't paying a bit of attention to what do you do with the needles and what happens if somebody's bleeding. I was like, when do I get to go to the theater and put the weights on the loading bridge and go see my friends over there? So it led to a real hard conversation, certainly with my mom, to say, hey, look, I'm thinking about switching my majors from nursing and to theater. And she said, well, after a long pause in her very Southern accent, she said, well, I guess there's more than money and stability in life. Go for it, honey. And so I made the switch, and really from that point forward, haven't slowed down until the coronavirus of 2020. I have pretty much had the blessing upon blessing of working in this industry ever since, about almost 20 years of it. I've done everything from ballet, opera, theater, corporate events. So I've done a lot of stage managing. I've done a lot of technical work. I've been exposed to a lot. So I'm excited about sharing some of that with you today. So anyway, that's enough of me yammering about random stuff. Let's do some question and answer. What are you wanting to know? If you know, in the Zoom feature that under participants, I think there's a hand raising little button that'll allow me to sort of see some hand raised in my little chat window. If you've got a question or curious about something, throw your hand up in that little chat window, and I will zoom through here and find a hand raised, and we will say, ask your question. Hang on, I'm doing it. I promise I'm doing it. Ethan K, where are you? Unmute and ask me a question, Ethan.
Hey, so our school got nominated for Dallas Summer Musicals for their High School Musical Theater Awards.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We did Chicago, and we got nominated for Best Musical.
Okay.
But have you ever got any awards or nominations for your show?
Sure. So I have not participated directly in the Tony Awards. That's the one thing on my bucket list. I did a show on Broadway with Sting a few years ago. His show was the show was nominated for a Best Original Score. But we did not, I think Sting ended up performing on the Tonys that year, or it was a smaller number. So I haven't participated in that way, but we have been nominated. It's a lot of fun. I have also had the pleasure of being at the Dallas Theater Center for about 7 years. I did 6 seasons there and was there for the Regional Tony Award. So a lot of fun, good times. I certainly know how excited you must feel right now, because it's a great feeling. We don't get a ton of recognition in this business sometimes. So when you do get it, it's nice to sort of go, yes, it does matter. People are paying attention. Good question. Thank you, Ethan. How about Crystal? Crystal Perez, are you there?
Yes, I am. So
Hi,
my
Crystal.
my question is, does managing Hamilton differ from managing other shows? And if so, like in what ways?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Thanks, Crystal. The short answer, of course, it's different. Every show is different. Managing every show requires you figuring out sort of what is this show's particular tricky management aspect. Sometimes that's people, sometimes that's dogs, sometimes that's flying, sometimes that's a different element. So yes, of course it's different. Hamilton happens to be the fact that we're in rehearsal all the time and it's a rotating cast all the time. People are sick and injured all the time. So the management of Hamilton specifically on a day-to-day basis is about personalities and keeping the show going every night in terms of health and replacements and just rehearsing all the time. That's not true in every other case. What I would say, though, is absolutely true is that the same management skills that you apply to Hamilton can apply to any show that you do. And then I would take that a step further and zoom out, what I call the zoom out, and I would zoom out to a larger sort of life perspective and say that the skills you get managing a show are skills that are applicable outside of the arts altogether. Right? It's about good people skills. It's about being able to connect with other individuals as a stage manager. One of the things I was talking to Devon and Seth about, and I say this a lot, I think Cheney Coles is with us today. Cheney's an assistant of mine who's currently just did Girl from the North Country on Broadway. One of the things that I talk about all the time is sort of this macro principle of management that is sort of you lead the people and manage the process. And what I mean by that is young stage managers and sometimes experienced stage managers will often try to manage people. In other words, a good example of that would be you're doing a rehearsal, you're supposed to move on at 2:00. It's 1:55. So you have a couple choices. One, you can do nothing, not great management or leadership. Two, you can go insert yourself to a director or choreographer and say, hey, we're moving on, it's 2:00. That would be managing, right? That would be the I'm moving us on no matter what, at no matter what cost. So the way I would equate that is it's how you manage a piece of paper, right? Like you sort of manage paperwork. Paperwork doesn't talk back. You have no interaction with the paperwork, really. You just put it down on the paper and it is so. If you try to do that with people, you're going to get met with more resistance. So the leadership version of that would be going up to the choreographer or director and say, hey, it's about 5 minutes till 2:00. Just wanted you to know where we were. Happy to, move in any direction. Or, hey, to remind you, we really do need to stay on schedule today. So we're about 5 minutes away. You can start doing that at 10 minutes, but it's suggestive. It's a calm and easy approach. But it is providing leadership as opposed to this is the management technique. And again, you can apply that anywhere. You can apply that anywhere in your life as you move beyond the walls of theater, for sure. Great question. I hope that answered it. I'm going to butcher this name, but is it Brianna Burgess?
It's Brianna.
Brianna, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good morning. What's your question?
My question is, you kind of mentioned like replacing cast members, but I was wondering who replaces the crew members, and do you get to choose like which crew members you want to hire, and what is that process like?
Great question. So the short answer is stage managers very rarely get to make any decisions like that, meaning what I would say ultimate hiring and firing decisions. We have I would even go as far to say in the commercial world, stage managers don't even really get to say who works for them all the time. You could have a producer or a director who really wants to work with me, but maybe I've not PSM'd a Broadway show before, but they really want me on the team. So they'll say to a producer, hey, Eric needs to be on the stage management team. And they'll go to the PSM and say, hey, this is unfortunately, you're going to have to deal with Eric because the producer wants him, right? So that's even a level at which we don't get a huge hiring and firing say. What we do get, and what everyone should sort of pay attention to, is that we do often get a voice. So treat your stage managers well is what I'm saying. Be very kind, and you should treat everybody that way. Let's just be honest. But stage managers get a particularly broad view of who you are as a crew member. Specifically, you were asking about crew members or actors, and oftentimes someone will come over and say, hey, gosh, did you hear Jim's leaving on the fly rail? What do you think? I was thinking about maybe promoting Brian, or we've got this new guy, or gosh, all of my people are busy. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions about who might take that spot? And that's where stage managers, people don't think we have a lot of sort of sway or power. And it's not about power, but influence. And in reality, oftentimes we do get that voice. I won't give you a specific example, but I will say that I know of stage managers who have been in the audition process. So typically for us, the audition process, we're about facilitating, right? We're about keeping the schedule moving. We're about preparing things. Sometimes we sit in the room and occasionally read with actors if you have a stage manager who's performance oriented. And typically we just sit there, we facilitate. Every now and then though, in between person A and person B, the director will say, Eric, you've worked with Brianna before. How is she? And quite frankly, you'll get a candid response. And that response will sometimes lead a director to go, ooh, I didn't realize. My specific example was doing a Christmas Carol once. Somebody said, I don't know, let's call it a 10-year-old. Somebody was like, hey, we're thinking about casting little Susie. And I'm like, absolutely not. Little Susie's mom is crazy. And we ain't going to deal with little Susie's mom. You know what I mean? So it's that kind of input that we get, not actually signing off on the hiring and firing. Great question. Scanning for hands. Anybody else got a hand raised, or anybody else want to wave at your screen and maybe I can see you, or Seth can see you? I see a hand coming up here. Who is that? Is that Ethan? Yes, Ethan. Go for it.
So do you have like a script for like blocking, and then another script for light cues and another script for something else, or is it all in one?
Great question. They're separate. Almost always for me, they are separate. I would say, hey, Cheney, unmute real quick. A girl from the North Country, did you have a separate one?
We had a separate blocking script. Obviously, the calling script was all one script, so it had all of the light, sound, automation, everything, and cue lights. We
separate,
have a separate blocking script, though, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I would say, Ethan, in general, it's a separate script. I know that sometimes in a less busy or maybe a show that's not going to run for a long time, that perhaps combining them works. You know, there's no right answer to that. I've seen versions where you do blocking on the left side, cues on the right side, or vice versa. That's a preference thing. But I would say in general, it's typically separate. We digitize ours. Who else has got a hand raised? Oh, we got.
Hey, Eric. So
yeah.
I got a question here for
Lay
you
it on me.
from the group chat thing.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Question is, are you a member of Actors Equity? And I would kind of add to that question in explaining kind of what your journey through Actors Equity was, and just a little bit about what the union is for those who don't know.
Yeah, great question. So Actors Equity is the union representation for actors and stage managers. I often sort of wrinkle my nose a little bit because I think stage managers sort of get lumped in there. I actually believe we're probably important enough that we should have our own rule book and have our own set of guidelines, but we don't. We follow the guidelines for both actors and stage managers under one agreement. Now, Actors Equity has, I don't know, hundreds of agreements or contracts, depending on where you're working and what you're doing. So there might, for example, Walt Disney World has their own Actors Equity agreement. Broadway has their own equity agreement. Dallas Theater Center is part of a regional theater group called LORT, the League of Resident Theaters, and they have their own rule book. You might go to Casa Manana in Fort Worth. They have a cost contract, which is its own rule book. Now, the differences are sometimes small, sometimes big, but the overall goal of that union, right, guys, is to protect us in terms of wages, in terms of working conditions. So those guidelines are what tell us sort of you can work this many hours a day without getting paid overtime. You can work in this temperature or not. But they generally protect us in that way. I am a member of Actors Equity. I joined Equity very young, and I do not always recommend that. So my story is very interesting because when people ask me, like, how did you do, what was your journey to equity? I always have to preface it by going, do not do what I did, because it is not necessarily the smartest thing. It thankfully had worked out for me. I took my equity card as a sophomore in college, actually, and have been a member of Actors Equity for 18 years. So equity, there are several ways you can join. You can join the apprentice program, and then once you have worked under the equity membership candidacy program a certain number of weeks. So let's say, for example, Dallas Theater Center offers the EMC program, which they do. And you go to work there. For every week that you work there, you get an equity point. And once you have reached, I'm sort of making this number up right now, but I want to say it's 50 points. Once you reach 50 points of EMC work, you can automatically apply and pay your dues and join the union. And then they send you the card and you're an equity member. The other way that you can do that is, let's say you've worked at the Dallas Theater Center and you've worked 30 points worth, and they've got a show coming up and they're like, hey, we really value Cheney's work, and we want Cheney to stage manage this, but she needs to be an equity member. So then they would hire Cheney on to stage manage that show, and they would assign her to an equity contract, at which point EMC is now out the window. Cheney decides, I'm going to join equity. She pays her dues, and she's an equity member. So then the follow-up question to that usually is, does it limit me, or what are why not join it when you get the opportunity? So typically speaking, when you join equity, you are not allowed to work as a stage manager in the industry without an equity contract, which means smaller theaters that employ stage managers don't always work under the equity contract. And technically, you would not be able to do those jobs. It happens. I'm not going to tell you it doesn't, but it is not legal or does not follow the bylaws of Actors Equity. So as a young person, you have to be really careful about when you take that membership, because it could shortchange your experience gathering portion of your career. The best way to learn this trade, guys, is to take your raw skills as young men and women, as young students, which all of you have, right? You're all, the simple fact that you took the time to get up at 10 o'clock and be here and listen to, this crazy guy ramble about a show says that you have a raw set of skills, of paying attention, of responsibility, of organization that you can apply. Stage managing requires experience. You have to get the experience, right? And what I would suggest anyone who out there is going, well, how do I get the experience, is this. Thank you, 15 minutes. That is amazing. Anyway, the way you get experience is you don't turn stuff down. early in your career is my advice, right? Is you work, because there is something to be gained in every experience by meeting new people. One of the things we have not talked about is the importance I believe in networking, and that should not be taken lightly in this industry or in any industry. You never know when you're going to meet someone on a certain day. Make an impression by smiling, firm handshake, and just putting yourself out there. You have no idea how that's going to impact your future. I'll use a theater example to drive that home. A stage manager friend of mine who's in New York had early in her career, she had worked with a guy who ultimately took Chicago out on a national tour, one of its national tours. She was in the city one day, she ran into him and she said, "Hey, what are you up to?" And he said, "Hey, I'm about to start rehearsal next week. It's funny I ran into you. This is low budget, and I'm in the rehearsal hall Monday taping out a set by myself. If you wanted to help, I would be very grateful, and I can't pay you, but I'll buy you lunch." She decided to get up. She went on Monday morning, her day off. She worked with him for about 4 or 5 hours. He bought her lunch and said thank you, and they went about their separate ways. Now you fast forward 8 months, he takes out the Addams Family, remembers Julie. Julie does her first national tour. In fact, called her very first Broadway national tour show right here in Dallas at Fair Park Music Hall when the Addams Family was here. So my point is, don't underestimate networking. And it requires experience, which is why you don't want to take that equity card too soon, because it will limit your ability to gather that experience. Okay. What else do we have? Anybody? Oh, we got raised hands. Is this Myra? Is that right? Myra, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, hi, Myra.
Hi. So I was kind of wondering, like, how hard is it to like work up? Because I've only been in ASM so far.
Yeah.
So how hard is it like to work up? And also, I kind of want to be an actor and a stage manager, but I haven't decided which one yet. So do you know like how to choose?
Well, what I would say is, you choose. The short answer is choose where your heart is most of the time that you can, and then the other part of that is sometimes you need a paycheck, and sometimes if that work happens to be as an ASM and you want to do that, that is okay. You should not feel bad. You should not feel guilty about that. You are still being able to do what you want to do in an industry you want to do it, and you're still supporting and collaborating, right? Because that's ultimately what this all is, right? The notion, theater was born out of that collaborative, hey, let's all get together and tell a story. And you can tell that story whether you're bringing a prop on, sending a palette on, or whether you're out there delivering lines. You're still part of the storytelling. What I would say is think about, really do some searching for yourself about what makes you happy, number one. Number two, where's your skill set, right? Like at some point, you need to be honest with yourself about how good of an actor, singer, dancer you are. And if you can be honest with yourself and go, hey, look, I'm going to save my talents for that because I'm really this good. This is how good I am. I can still contribute to my local theater company, but I'm not going to make it in commercial theater. I'm not going to be on Broadway or national tour. And so I'm going to look at that and be honest with myself about that. But I do have this skill set of being really organized, of being really enjoying being around actors, directors, designers. I enjoy the immense puzzle piecing together a show. And if you look at that skill set and go, hey, I've got that and I want to continue to do it, then absolutely start to ASM, start to get yourself involved in different things. And then that will lead you. It will lead you. You'll be able to go, I really enjoy this, or, oh, no, I definitely don't want to do that. And then you pursue that, right? Like you literally find out where that's happening, or is there an opportunity for me to practice that skill set somewhere else so that I can ultimately take it back to the dream job or where I really want to be. And that's not an easy journey for you, for anyone. And certainly for someone at your in high school right now, that's a mature question for you to be wrestling with. So kudos to you for recognizing that and being able to go, what do I do? Just let your heart lead a little bit, and then don't let your heart get so far ahead of your head that you don't go, wait a minute, there are other ways I can use my skills. Great question. Okay. There's all kinds of flashy things happening. Okay. I'm going to Abby Heath. Are you here?
Yeah, I am.
Hi, Abby. What's your question?
So I've been the stage manager for my high school for the past 3 years. It's my senior
Bless
year
you.
now. So I've been asked to train the next stage manager, and with the whole COVID thing now, my director's decided that she wants to do that through videos. Do you have any like advice for that, or any thoughts that you have after class?
Oh boy. Okay. So here's what I would focus on. The job of a stage manager is multifaceted, right? We know that. We all agree that you've done it. You understand that there are different skill sets of stage management. You're not going to be able to teach someone about managing people or leadership of people by a Zoom call. You can talk situations and maybe dabble in it, meaning, you might be able to say, what happens when Miss Benenate or Miss Merrill goes crazy? Like, what do I do? Like, what's your experience with that? Like, what are some techniques that help her calm down? Or is it better just stay out of the way? Those kinds, you can have that conversation. You're never going to be able to teach somebody how to do that until they've experienced it, right? Because your heart races at a different pace when it's happening to you in the moment. You can talk about it all day long, but until somebody's actually there yelling at you or throwing a script at you, it's only happened once in my career, but it did happen. It's like, when that happens, it's like, what do you do, right? What you can do is you can do what we did, and you can screen share, and you can say, hey, here are my philosophies or thoughts about contact sheets, paperwork, organization. You can talk about, hey, what I've learned at the audition process at so-and-so high school is they're going to tell you this, but this is really what they want you to do. All of that kind of information you can impart. And that's literally a monumental task for you to try to do that over Zoom, because there's so many facets of it. But if I were going to look at the big thing and go, how do I tackle this? That's what I would do. I would go, hey, we can talk all day long, share stories. Let's focus on the paperwork and make sure that you have all the tools from that end of things. And then as soon as we can get back together and figure out the people thing, or, hey, next year when you're doing this and you have a situation, don't be afraid to text or call and say, Austin Scott's freaking out. What do I do? He would never freak out. That's why I used him.
One moment.
Oh, sorry. Siri thinks I'm trying to call Austin. Okay. Other questions. Let's see. We got Jacob. What you got, Jacob?
Hi.
Oh, there you are. Hi, Jacob.
Hi. So I've been doing theater for 5-ish years now as an actor, and I started doing tech around 1.5 years ago. And currently I go to a school that has no theater whatsoever, no arts really. Magnet school. It's pretty weird. And so I've started finding ways to do tech, and what you were saying with networking, my friend was in a show with Uptown Players, and now I work for them.
Yep, that's it. That's a winner. That's exactly right. That's it.
So
no, that's it. That's there you go, folks.
I'm a stagehand for them now.
Amazing.
And what I was just wondering is how, as a high schooler who doesn't have a really school program in this area, what do you recommend doing to try and expand in this area of stage management and tech in general?
It's a great question. I'm going to use a sort of a silly example at school first. First thing I would explore at your school is what are the things at your school that dabble in technology or technical gear being used. For example, is there an announcement period that uses a microphone? Are there assemblies that use podiums and microphones? One way you could tackle that is to go, who does that at your school? Get in touch with that person and say, hey, I'd really like to help you do this, manage this. Because what's going to happen is, do you have a band or a choral program?
We actually have, our school we have a film group, so we have tons of that technical equipment, mixers and mics, so yeah.
Absolutely. So figure out at your school if there's a void in managing that, or just who uses it, and say, hey, I'd love to just be on your next film shoot. Because you're going to get out there, you're going to learn some things about equipment, you're going to learn the people you're dealing with, and you might go, hey, I don't want to talk to Jimmy, but Bobby, he's got something, and I'm going to figure out what Bobby's doing next, right? And then that'll lead you to where it leads you. And then outside of your walls, you're doing the right thing. Absolutely find those theater companies that interest you. Theaters are never ever not in need of labor, and by that I mean you need to know that you're worth. We were talking a little bit yesterday about knowing your value and worth as a technician, as a stage manager, as an artist, right? And so early in your journey, you're going to have to sort of navigate perhaps not making as much money or not being rewarded in certain ways. That will ultimately pay off. And then you're going to get to a place where you've got enough experience and you're going to be able to look at that and go, no, I'm actually worth this amount of money or resource to get my skill set. Does that make sense? But you're doing the right thing. So I would say keep going. But that's how I would navigate your school. Just figure out where, sort of nuzzle your way in there. Okay, we have 3 minutes. We can get one more in. I know we can. I will talk fast. Oh, hang on. We got some. Oh, that's a 5-minute call. Okay, we're at places right now, folks. So anybody else? Oh, Brianna's got one more. Go for it.
Sorry, I have a lot of questions.
No, it's okay. I can get it in 2.5 minutes. Do it.
Okay. So I was wondering, what are your plans like after you do Hamilton? Because like a lot of people, like you're living like their dream. Like this is what they want to do for the rest of their life, is just do Hamilton. Like that's their favorite show. So like, where do you go after you've like hit all of your aspirations?
What a great way to end this. Okay, I'm going to leave you with these two things. First of all, I have finished my time on the tour. I decided to leave the tour late last year after 14 and a half months. I have an 11-year-old daughter who is about to go into middle school. And she has become the priority, meaning it doesn't mean that I'm not actively doing theater and not pursuing things and doing shows. It just means that I can't do it at the level of Hamilton and really give her the attention she needs as a middle school young woman. So what I would say is right now my focus is taking care of, I run the Performing Arts Center at Fort Worth Country Day School. I am trying to impart some knowledge to the high school technical theater class there. And I will continue to do that. I'll continue to connect with students, young people, and I'll continue to feed my sort of need to do this outside of the academic world. I have a couple of corporate clients that I work for. I hope to develop more of that. I want more of those because they're short and sweet, right? I'll continue to work at CASA. I'll continue to be involved with Dallas Summer Musicals and the High School Musical Theater Awards if they'll have me. That's a great way for me to do it. I also sub at Hamilton now. So like I can go and sub in San Francisco. I can sub on the other tour and I can sub on my tour. So I will continue to stay connected that way. Bucket list, to be honest with you, the Olympics. That's what's next on Eric Tysinger's. I want to be involved in the Olympics in some way. So I hadn't figured it out yet. Haven't gotten my window, hadn't figured out exactly who to talk to, but I'm going to do it, by George, as soon as this COVID thing is done. Great question. I still have the goals. I just have to do them a little more, have to be crafty about it to take care of Emma right now. And my wife, of course, who needs some support. Like she got tired of doing the dishes by herself for 14 and a half months. Guys, I think we have reached 11 o'clock on the nose. I cannot thank you enough for giving up some time this morning. I hope that it wasn't too boring listening to me ramble. But it's a pleasure to see you all. Congrats on all your successes this year. Keep going. We'll get over this virus, and we'll all be telling stories for many months to come afterwards. So that's all I've got. Seth, anything else that you need me to hit?
Just a real big thank you, Eric. This was amazing. I'm really glad you got to share your expertise with us. If you have any questions moving forward, students, please send us emails. We are happy to help. DSM is a resource for you. So please let us know if there's anything that we can do to better serve you, any content that you would like to see. We definitely want to help you out there. Me and Devon stage managed for quite some time too, so we can definitely help you all out and send questions over to Eric too. Definitely let us know what you need and we'll take care of you. So that's all we got. Hopefully see you next week. Sign up for those master classes. Have a good day.
Thank you guys. Bye-bye. Hey, Jacob.